Next on Currents News, Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese are fighting to have Mother Cabrini honored by the city of New York for her contributions to immigrants. I'm Tim Harfman, and I'll have the story.
The wind brought an incredible, immense fire, which ruined everything.
That's the latest on the wildfires disaster in Greece. And Chile's top cardinal is being summoned by prosecutors in the country's sex abuse crisis. Vatican expert Inés San Martin will be here to discuss what it means. Plus, does Russia have the power to turn out the lights? New worries about Moscow and the U.S. power grid. The news starts right now.
She really helped New York City form.
New Yorkers are being urged to vote for Mother Cabrini in a citywide campaign to honor the great women who helped build the Big Apple. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. St. Francis Cabrini lived in Brooklyn and did so much, creating schools, hospitals, support for immigrants. Now, there's a drive underway to officially recognize her extraordinary work. And Currents News' Tim Harfman is here with the story. Tim.
Liz, Mother Cabrini is the patroness of immigrants, but she could also be considered a saint among skyscrapers. Now Catholics are heading to the polls, fighting for the city to recognize the beloved saint who has deep ties to the Brooklyn Diocese. New Yorkers like John Heyer want to see Mother Cabrini recognized.
She really helped New York City form, because as she helped the Italian population form, she helped other immigrant groups that came afterwards.
A campaign aims to create a public art collection honoring the diverse history of women in New York. Residents can go online to nominate people. Catholics hope the beloved saint is chosen. Mother Cabrini arrived in New York from Italy in 1889 to help immigrants. She worked in what is now Sacred Heart's St. Stephen Parish in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, the oldest Italian parish.
She noticed that the parents were working long hours and leaving the children home unattended to. And so she started schools, she started programs even for the parents to learn trades.
She also established hospitals and social service programs like orphanages. Rosemary Folia is one of thousands of New Yorkers benefiting today thanks to Mother Cabrini, and wants to see her honored.
She's a perfect candidate for this just because of all that she has done.
Rosemary attended the now shuttered Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary Catholic Elementary School, which was established by the religious order Mother Cabrini founded, Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart. Today there are murals, church statues, and even a Brooklyn park to honor Mother Cabrini. But John says that's not enough.
Honoring her in this way, you'll definitely step it up and recognize the work that she has done as a woman, as an immigrant, for all of New York City to allow it to prosper.
And with immigration being a hot topic today, these Catholics say that's more of a reason why Mother Cabrini should be honored.
I think it's just so appropriate.
And if you want to nominate Mother Cabrini, you better act fast. Go online to www.women.nyc/shebuiltnyc. Voting ends a week from today, August 1st. The city hasn't finalized the number of women who will be honored, but Liz, Mother Cabrini is a strong candidate.
She really is a strong candidate. As a woman, of course, I'm encouraged.
That's
now,
right.
When people go to the website, how easy is it to navigate?
It's simple, but they'll need some information. They'll need her name, Mother Francis Cabrini, the year she died, 1918, what she was known for, opening schools, hospitals, and helping immigrants, plus the year that she began to do great things, which was 1889, the year that she came here to New York.
Tim, I'm looking at the mural, I'm looking at the schools. Are there other places in the diocese that honor Mother Cabrini?
There are. There's St. Francis Cabrini Church in Bensonhurst, and there's also a Catholic academy named after her in Bushwick, Liz.
All right, Tim, thank you so much for that report. I'll be looking forward to that vote. The pictures coming out of Greece are startling. One day after raging wildfires tore through 3 regions in the country, these images show the desperation. People trying to escape the flames, running to the shore, many jumping into the sea because they had nowhere else to turn. Greece is under a state of emergency at this hour. At least 80 people are dead, and towns have been annihilated. One of the worst hit in the seaside village of Mati. Melissa Bell reports from there.
Wildfires rage across the hills surrounding Athens, forcing many to jump into the sea to escape the flames. A wall of fire so hot it melts the tires of cars in its path. And moving so fast that dozens were trapped as they tried to escape. Some of the victims in Mati, to the east of Athens, were found clinging to each other.
Yes, it's true. It seems that some of them, the deceased, knew each other because they were found in groups of 3 and 4, so they could be friends or relatives or families who tried to protect themselves by hugging each other.
In Mati, the fire has now been put out, and locals like Doris Konturiotis are returning to size up the damage.
The temperature was so high, so nobody could do anything just in this area. As you can see, houses, cars, everything destroyed from the fire. I have lost everything.
But elsewhere, the fires continue to rage as 500 firefighters battle to put out the flames. Hundreds have been evacuated and a state of emergency has been declared. The Greek Prime Minister has urged people in threatened neighborhoods to flee immediately.
Now it is the time for mobilization and fighting. A fight to save what can be saved. A fight to defeat the fire. A fight to find the missing, so that we don't mourn any more lives and we may soothe the pain of those affected.
So much of that pain is being felt here in Mati, where the cleanup operation is underway and where so many of the victims of these fires died, many of them on this street, either in their cars or trying to flee them. The street itself is covered with dried puddles of molten aluminum, a reminder, the remains of an inferno so ferocious that it stopped those who happened to be here in their tracks.
Melissa Bell continued her reporting from the Mati neighborhood of Attica, where residents are beside themselves. All they once owned is gone.
As morning breaks in Attica, a scene of utter devastation. The survivors begin to count the terrible cost, even as the search for the missing continues.
So we're searching in the burnt houses to see if they are completely abandoned or find something more.
Christiana Fragku has come back to her home to see what's left.
This is my burned home. The wind brought an incredible, immense fire, which ruined everything. I couldn't save all my cats and dogs. My mum's house. I thought at the beginning that she was dead because she managed to go to another little beach.
Christiana herself only survived by taking refuge on the cliff face, but 26 people died here, locked in a final embrace.
Unfortunately, a lot of people who were trapped, and of course they don't know, they're not acquainted well of this area. They saw our 2 doors, which we left open. They came down, but they were just the last ones, as the fire was approaching and was very, very strong. They couldn't make it because they couldn't find their way out to the water. And they were trapped inside our house. That's all I can tell you.
Just devastating. Melissa Bell reporting from Mati on the Greek wildfires disaster. Pope Francis is mourning those who died in the wildfires. The Holy Father offered condolences to all those affected by the tragedy and encouraged emergency personnel in their rescue efforts. Vatican Radio quoted a witness in Mati saying the town looks like it has been hit by a nuclear bomb. A showdown at the White House to avert a trade war. President Trump facing off with the head of the European Commission, Omar Jimenez, has the latest.
President Trump meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker, president of the European Union Commission, amidst an ongoing trade and tariff dispute.
We should focus on reducing tariffs, not on increasing them, and that's what we have to do. That's our job.
Well, I agree, and if we could have no tariffs and no barriers and no subsidies, the United States would be extremely pleased.
But both sides still have some work to do. Back in March, in the wake of Trump's threats to hit European steel and aluminum imports with steep tariffs, Juncker said this.
This is basically a stupid process, the fact that we have to do this. But we have to do it.
The European Union, along with Mexico and Canada, retaliated with tariffs of their own this summer, some targeting U.S. exports of agriculture products. China did the same after President Trump imposed $50 billion in tariffs on Chinese imports. Now, the Trump administration is offering $12 billion in aid to American farmers hurt by these tariffs.
We're not trying to replace farm income per se. We believe that the marketing disadvantages by the retaliatory tariffs have an impact on that.
But some Republicans have criticized the decision.
The tactics that are being used right now are not helping our producers.
And as negotiations continue, the hope is to prevent a transatlantic trade war from joining the tariff fight already brewing across the Pacific with China. In Washington, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
The race is on to reunite families separated after they crossed the U.S.-Mexico border illegally. A court-ordered deadline is tomorrow, and the judge says the Trump administration is making, quote, remarkable progress. Dana Sobral says he expects his timetable will likely be met, but he still finds the government's original policy deeply troubling. In another immigration case that captured headlines, a Brooklyn pizza delivery man is reunited with his daughter.
It's immense. I'm so happy.
What's it like to see your daughter?
Oh my God.
Pablo Villavicencio Calderon was released from prison overnight. He's an undocumented immigrant from Ecuador who was arrested last month by ICE while delivering pizza at Brooklyn's Fort Hamilton Army Base. There's a lot more news headed your way. Chile's top cardinal must meet prosecutors over the sex abuse crisis. Inez San Martin is here next to talk about the development. New worries about Russian hacking and fears the lights could go out in America. And a controversial law is back in the spotlight after deadly shootings over a parking space. And do you have a story idea, something happening in your parish we should know about? Because we want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. We'll be right back. Chile's top cardinal, Ricardo Ezzati, is being summoned by prosecutors for questioning about the country's sex abuse crisis. U.S. Cardinal Sean O'Malley, the Pope's point man on abuse reform, is calling for stronger action against high-ranking clerics accused of wrongdoing. So to dig into these twin developments, we turn to Crux Vatican correspondent Inez San Martin. She's been on top of these stories with exclusive reports since the beginning. She joins us now. Inez, you know you are our go-to person. First, Chile and Santiago's Cardinal Ezzati. What do prosecutors want to know from him? And is he a target of their investigation?
Well, Liz, what prosecutors in Chile want to know is if Cardinal Ezzati did in fact know about the abuses committed by his former chancellor, Father Oscar Munoz, who reported himself for having sexually abused a minor. We know since he did that at least 7 other people have come forward saying they've been abused by him. What the prosecutors want to know is if Ezzati knew about these charges or these allegations and if he covered them up.
Inez, there's so many layers to this. You're reporting that when investigators raided church offices, a letter was uncovered that could be incriminating. What is that about?
The letter comes from Archbishop Alejandro Goic, the former head of the Diocese of Rancagua, which is where the prosecutors have actually summoned Ezzati to. That letter very explicitly says that Goic doubts Ezzati is doing as much as he can when it comes to fighting clerical sexual abuse. It's worth noting, however, at least, that Goic has since been removed from office by Pope Francis. I'm talking about less than a month ago. He was removed from office. We don't know why, but we do believe it's related to the clerical sexual abuse scandals that have hurt the Catholic Church in Chile all through the country.
And with all this happening next week, Chile's bishop scheduling an emergency meeting. What's expected to come from that?
Well, what we're expecting to see is a set of guidelines as to how the Catholic Church in Chile is going to move forward when it comes to addressing the clerical sexual abuse crisis. Pope Francis told them to come up with short, mid, and long-term responses to the crisis. We're going to see some of them coming out. What will be interesting to see is how does the Chilean society respond to those guidelines, since there's a lot of, right now, doubts regarding the hierarchy and its role in the cleanup process.
Cardinal O'Malley is saying that sex abuse allegations against former Washington Cardinal Theodore McCarrick must be handled, quote, swiftly and decisively. And he's also pointing to a major gap for holding bishops and cardinals accountable. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts right now, Liz, I'm going to quote what's been said to me repeatedly. If McCarrick was a priest and the allegations that we've seen against him were to be confirmed, he'd already been defrocked. I doubt Colonel McCarrick is going to be defrocked. However, a lot of people are asking for further action, and this is not only involving McCarrick. We've heard repeatedly that others in the hierarchy knew. What people today want to say is who knew and what's going to happen to those who did in fact know about McCarrick and did nothing.
And what is likely the big question looking forward, Inez, what is Pope Francis likely to do about the McCarrick case and the Chile scandal?
Well, Liz, it's often said Pope Francis is a man of surprises. However, when it comes to his way of addressing clinical sexual abuse, I think people don't want to see surprises. They want to see him having a strong hand and putting his foot down when it comes to addressing the issue. When it comes to Chile, we're going to see him accepting the resignations of more bishops. When it comes to McCarrick, however, what I've been told is not a lot of people think more than what's already been done is going to be done. And by what's been done, of course, I mean he's been suspended from ministry.
All right, Inez, thank you so much for unpacking that with us. As always, you bring us a lot of insight and perspective. You know we'll be touching base with you again very soon. Have a great one. Could the Kremlin knock out the American power grid? That's the question security experts are worried about tonight on the heels of Russian meddling in U.S. elections. Jim Sciutto reports UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is blunt in her assessment of Moscow's leader.
We don't trust Putin. We never will. They're never going to be our friend. That's just a fact.
Tonight, concerned that Russian government hackers have carried out probing cyber attacks on vital U.S. infrastructure, including the power grid, potentially giving the Kremlin the ability to turn off the lights. Earlier this year, the Department of Homeland Security and FBI detailed a 2-year multi-stage effort by Moscow targeting hundreds of companies that they believe is still ongoing. The hackers first gained access to small energy-related companies, planting malware that then allowed them to move into larger networks. Once inside the energy suppliers, the Russians collected information on the facility's control systems, attempting to acquire the ability to turn those systems off.
They're identifying targets, they're positioning malware so they could pull the trigger when they wanted to. But they're also sending the United States a message. We are in position to cause harm if we wanted to do it. And so the U.S., should be a little more careful.
A spokesperson for DHS cautions that while hundreds of companies were targeted, the Russians' access was limited and, quote, would not have had any impact on the larger grid if taken offline. The Russians targeted other crucial sectors as well, including nuclear power, water, aviation, and manufacturing. Experts see the intrusions as a possible precursor to an unprecedented Russian cyber attack that could, in the event of all-out war, devastate the U.S. homeland. The director of the NSA and commander of U.S. Cyber Command says that Russia presents a clear and present danger.
Our adversaries will continue to penetrate and try to penetrate such things as our critical infrastructure. What should we do about that? And I think it's both the idea of being vigilant about that, certainly. It's also the idea of being able to act forward.
The experts are convinced Russia has the capability to hack into several of the U.S.'s most critical infrastructures.
Mr. President, I'll give this ball to you, and now the ball is in your court.
The soccer ball Vladimir Putin gave President Donald Trump could be bugged. According to manufacturer Adidas, that type of ball usually contains a transmitter capable of sending content to nearby mobile devices. The Secret Service says the ball was screened. A new national debate about Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground law, sparking renewed protests. The shooting death of a man over a parking space. James Dinan reports.
Demonstrators took to the streets in Clearwater, Florida, after the announcement that a man who shot and killed another man after being pushed is not facing charges. The reason? The state's Stand Your Ground law. Officials say Michael Draka confronted a woman about parking in a handicap spot. Her boyfriend, Marquise McLaughlin, then walked up to Draka and knocked him down. Draka responded by shooting the man once, killing him.
He wasn't a troubled guy. He wasn't out there looking for trouble, but he would stand up for his family.
The sheriff says the issue was whether the shooter was in fear of bodily harm.
No matter how you slice it or dice it, that was a violent push to the ground. He had to shoot to defend himself.
The McLaughlin family and their attorneys disagree.
You cannot provoke a fight and then hide behind Stand Your Ground.
It is just a very bad law that encourages people in society
to take the law into their own hands.
The state attorney's office will now get the case. Michael Draka has declined to answer multiple media inquiries. WFTS in Florida reported the 47-year-old put a sign outside his home that reads, "No comment." I'm James Dinan reporting.
Still to come on Currents News, the vice president comes to the aid of a young man who collapses. And I'll tell you about a story of kindness and compassion that will help a young woman fulfill her dream. We'll be right back. Vice President Mike Pence rushed to help a young boy in Montana yesterday. The boy was waiting for the vice president to arrive in Billings, Montana, when he passed out due to heat. The vice president and his security team hurried to the young man's side as first responders tended to him. The boy was later able to show a thumbs up to the camera and take a picture with Vice President Pence. A young girl with big dreams at the top of her high school class shattered when she learned she could not afford college. But even on a day as rainy as today, we're reminded every cloud has a silver lining. It wasn't long before the generosity of others began pouring in.
I've cried and I've tried to find out ways that I can make more money.
She was looking forward to her academic future until Jacinda Vertrees, the co-valedictorian from Kentucky Central High School, discovered her single mom didn't file taxes in 2016. That put her financial aid and plans to attend Mary State University for its veterinary program on hold. She owed the school $8,000 or she'd be dropped from her first semester classes. And then things turned around in a big way for the 18-year-old who works full-time in the food service industry. Her story got out and assistance started pouring in thanks to the kindness and quick thinking of this young woman. Her motivation? Simple.
Because, well, for one, because she's my best friend.
Lee Himes launched a GoFundMe page without Vertrees knowing. She says through the years, she watched her best friend pay for things others her age didn't have to. She didn't want her left behind after working so hard.
It's important for her to have her education.
$10 here, $50 there, some as much as $1,000, $8,000, and then some raised in a day.
So crazy. It doesn't feel real that people actually help. I just want to thank everyone for helping, for sharing, for donating. Anything helped, and it's just amazing.
The two will attend Murray State together, Vertrees promising to fix her financial aid.
Make sure that everything's figured out. I'm going to look for more scholarships for next semester, next year even, just something I'm invested in.
And I'm sure she's encouraged knowing the community invested in her success. Such a feel-good story on such a dreary day. That is Currents News. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.